Hello there, my name is Anna-Malia and I'm from North East Animal Rights. I'm delighted to welcome along Kimberly Moore, who is an animal rights author, and she's the author of this fantastic book, which she's going to hold up there and read out the title of, please.
It is called The Case for the Legal Protection of Animals, Humanity's Shared Destiny with the Animal Kingdom.
Thank you very much. Thank you for reading that out as well, because I know that I would have got that wrong. But thanks very much for coming along to talk to us today. And we're going to start straight off with the question which I ask everyone. Could you tell me about your vegan journey, please?
Of course. I've been vegan for about 10 years. Prior to that time, I was a slow vegetarian. I gradually became vegetarian over probably a decade. But it only took those videos of the calves that they separate from the mothers to just, it was an overnight transformation. I didn't want any part of it. I went to the store, I brought home almond milk, hated it the first time I tried it, but I kept thinking about the calf. And probably about the third time, I just fell in love with almond milk. And I have since discovered everything in the world you can imagine is available now for dairy. So yeah, that was a fantastic transformation.
Yeah, a lot of people come in. I mean, I actually came in through that sort of that route as well. Being a vegetarian and then seeing dairy farm footage. So yeah, I feel what you're saying. So can you tell me about why you decided to write on this particular topic? You know, the legal part of it. Who was your intended audience, and how did that affect the way you wrote this book?
Sure. So this book was probably 5 years in the making. The book is it introduces animals to the world, essentially. It talks about every industry, from fashion, farm animals, animals in research. It sort of shows what their life is like. And then I follow that with developments from all over the globe, because animal law is a field that is absolutely exploding. Even 10 years ago, we didn't have laws that we have today. What I'm seeing, though, is the United States is a laggard. We are lagging behind all of our major trading partners. We are not seeing the laws being passed in the United States that we are seeing abroad. So this book is meant to make the case for the legal protection of animals, again, based on our shared interest with the animal kingdom. This book is published by Palgrave Macmillan, which is the preeminent academic publisher in the world. The intended target is officially law schools, universities, colleges worldwide, but it really is, can be read by anyone who is interested in understanding, how laws are developing to protect animals. So very excited about this. It's getting good reviews. I've gotten some positive feedback. Mr. Peter Singer, who is of course, the godfather of our movement, had great things to say about it. So I'm very appreciative and excited to get this first book out.
Yeah. So why do you think the US is lagging behind? You're saying it, obviously, other partners. Is it because, I'm kind of thinking, maybe anecdotally, is it because the US is so big and that almost all the states are countries within countries? Could it be that, or is it something else, do you think?
Well, absolutely. Most of the reforms that we're seeing are happening at the state and local levels. But I think that we have industries that are billion-dollar industries that are making their money off the backs of animals. Yes. So there is a huge financial incentive for status quo. And that's really the challenge in the United States. We have weak laws to start with. You probably have heard of our humane slaughter bill at the federal level that doesn't protect 98% of the animals. And then we have issues with enforcement. So our laws that we do have are not enforced by state and federal officials. That's slowly changing, but for now we still have major issues. And then, of course, the lobbying arm of the farm industry is incredibly powerful. They have millions of dollars to lobby and to market their products as humane, which we know is not the case. And they have millions more to actually draft laws. The farm industry actually has drafted the laws that we have. They're not intended to protect animals. And so we have our work cut out for us, but based on what we're seeing around the world, I believe this is the direction that we're going.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about the funding, like the lobbying and everything which goes on. Obviously, we're watching the build up to the elections right now over in the US with Trump and Harris, and we are kind of, we kind of get that there's so much money going into these campaigns, and obviously they've kind of, people are putting money into these campaigns because they expect to be protected when their preferred person gets into office. So a lot of these people, will be the dairy industry, the pork industry, the pig industry, the animal using industries. So that must be a huge challenge for someone like you when you know there's so much money going into in the political side of it.
Absolutely. I mean, the sad truth of the matter is every political party fills animals.
Yeah.
That is true. Every country fills animals. Every religion, every tradition fills animals, some worse than others. I was happy to hear that Vice President Harris had talked about putting a tax on red meat because of the high environmental cost that beef farming does. So that was encouraging. But yeah, we would love to hear more about, how we can protect animals in the natural world from our leaders. But we have a ways to go. We're not quite there yet.
Yeah. I can imagine though that was met with some consternation. I mean, and some downright opposition from those industries who, if she's saying she wants to put a tax on red meat on animals, that then
yeah.
Yeah.
Our industries are incredibly smart. They play on people's fears. They talk about tradition and culture, and any reform that comes out like this is immediately attacked. So, it's difficult to see.
I mean, we know that things have changed, and we know that things are changing for the better, just not quick enough. And it's sort of like the book that you've written. How do you think it's sort of how receptive do you think readers will be on what you're writing about now in terms of what they would have been maybe a few years ago?
I think readers are going to be incredibly receptive, and the evidence is what we see on social media when an animal is harmed or when an issue comes up involving animals. The public almost overwhelmingly is against animal cruelty of any form. It's just that the embedded interest that we have in industries does a great job of shielding the public from the actual realities of like factory farming. But I think the time is right. The public is they are fed up with animal cruelty. We see that time and time again. Social media stories go viral when an animal is harmed. So I think that the time is right. The time is right. People are interested in changing laws. They're interested in reforms. They're certainly interested in dairy alternatives because our dairy industry has basically dropped by 50% in a matter of decades. So that industry is a dying industry. So yes, if the public was in charge, we would have phenomenal laws. And we see this with referendums and state initiatives where the public actually weighs in. We saw this with California's Prop 12, the sort of landmark foundational law that sort of tries to get animals out of the tight cages, prevent suffering. They're otherwise going to be slaughtered anyways, but just to minimize the suffering that occurs before they're killed. And we saw that in my state, Florida, the greyhound racing law was overwhelmingly supported. People were sick of seeing dogs dying on tracks and people just, abusing animals for profit's sake. So yes, the time is right. And that's what we need. We need more control and decision-making with the public.
Yeah, we see it very similar here. We're here when we, if any sort of campaign like we have Veganuary, and as soon as we have Veganuary, all the adverts will go out from the animal using companies about how healthy it is, how you can get B12, how you can get calcium, how you can get this from animals. And obviously over in the US, you've got you've got milk campaign as well on all of your social media and adverts. And that's obviously come over here. We've seen that come over here on social media. So they are fighting back, and obviously they've got billions and billions of pounds and dollars to fight back with. But it doesn't say that we don't have to do it. I mean, like you said, the time is right. We've got to keep on doing this, and your book was a really important part of that.
I do talk about humane washing in my book because the Federal Trade Commission in the United States is the agency charged with making sure that the information delivered to consumers is accurate and not misleading. And we can't walk up any aisle in the grocery store without seeing claims that something is earth-friendly, animal-friendly, free range. And if you take a look at, behind these labels, time and time you find again that it's just a label. There's no reality to it whatsoever.
Yeah, there's a really good documentary done by Joey Carbstrong over here called Pignorant, and he did exactly that. He was challenging the RSPCA, who are a leading animal welfare organisation here, they pay farmers pay them money to have this RSPCA assured stamp, but the reality is these are still paying, they're paying slaughterhouses to put pigs in gas chambers. So apart from the fact it's very mixed messages, it's very misleading to the public because they think they're getting free range or organic, and the reality is these animals are still being killed in exactly the same way as the caged and intensive farmed animals as well.
And we know that's true because whenever whistleblowers try to expose the lies,
Yes.
what you see is states come up with ag-gag laws. So they try
Yes.
to outlaw whistleblowing and truth telling, which is actually unconstitutional in the United States. We still have a few of those in our books, but one by one, they're being knocked down as an unconstitutional infringement on free speech.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, animal rights, the movement, and it's a subject which has been debated by philosophers and scientists and educators and activists over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years now. But how important do you think it is that lawmakers are now brought in this conversation? Kind of like all the conflicting issues they've got to deal with. The cost of living, education, healthcare, all those sorts of things. And how complicated are those relationships with the public and the people who are actually making those laws as well?
It's actually very complicated. Like I mentioned, the dairy industry is a declining industry in the United States, yet the US government funds billions of dollars worth of subsidies and additional funding to keep that industry, prop that industry up. Yeah. I mean, what we want to see is subsidies to sort of drive plant-based alternatives. I mean, that's where the future is. That's where it has to be from an environmental perspective. There's no getting around it. So there is a big disconnect now between our laws and what we need, even in terms of reducing our risk from zoonotic diseases. All of the bad things is going to happen when we continue to lose biodiversity. I mean, all these things are cascading effects of our own making. Yeah. And so we need to absolutely get our laws in line with our principles and where the public is, and to sort of, just right the ship. We've sort of lost our way along the way of how we treat animals, and it's having devastating impacts for humanity.
So do you genuinely feel that the public are on side? The kind of like they actually fundamentally get it. They haven't all these facts, like the reality of the so-called humane slaughter. Do you think it's because they're having things hidden from them? But do you think they're genuinely on side? I know, like over here in the UK, when we talk to people about the reality of what happens, a lot of them are very, very upset, very sort of shocked. They don't believe us. They say that's not true. That can't happen. That can't happen in the UK. So is that the sort of thing that you're getting over there as well?
I definitely think that the public is deceived in terms of how comprehensive the laws are. The laws don't exist in this country adequately to protect animals. But I also think 100%, without a doubt, the public is behind legal reforms. That was the main purpose of my book, was to also point out that, the public morales are not aligned with our laws. And if they were, we would see a far different legal landscape. I would just point out, the United States is known for bringing in, trophy hunting and illegal wildlife. That is a tiny, tiny percentage of our population. The vast majority of people are 100% against trophy hunting and the trafficking of live and dead wildlife. 100% the public is behind these changes. It's just we need to, rein in these tiny percentages of people. I read another statistic. 12% of the population consumes more than 50% of the meat in the United States. Again, a tiny, tiny population, probably the elite and the rich who can afford meat these days. And it's having devastating consequences for everyone else. The environment and climate change is going to hit the poor hardest than anyone else. Yes. So, yeah.
So what do you think of what other challenges are you seeing to legal reform?
Well, there's weak laws, there's lack of enforcement, there's the entrenched industries and their lobbying arms. But I think aside from that, the challenge is really humane education, and it's really taken off in the last two decades. I mean, I think back 2 decades ago, if someone said an animal is sentient, people they wouldn't understand what that meant. And what is that? What does that mean? Now I hear random people in sort of non-animal rights worlds talk about how an animal can feel and how they're sentient and how they have their own natural tendencies. So I think human education is really critical. And I think that's the easy part, because again, I think the public is really, they're hungry for this information. They just can't get enough. So that's the positive.
That came into law with us about 18 months ago. That the sentient part of animal welfare, the Animal Welfare Act, but that there was a bit of a delay because they decided not to include fish and sea life. But then they did put that in after a lot of sort of like going to and fro. But it is in law now, because as you know, I mean, fish feel pain. They have the same sentience as other animals. They have the same capacity for sentience as other animals. But that is in law now. But obviously, you'll know that we've just changed our government as well. So we have, as animal rights activists, we have high hopes for this government. To kind of like to roll back some of the awful laws which were put in place by the previous government, but at the same time, we've got to kind of like keep on top of things and make sure that they're, keeping them honest as well, which I suppose you're going to have to do because, in a few months' time, you're going to have a new president.
Absolutely. And legal reforms really are built on research of animal cognition and intelligence. And that was sort of the whole litigation strategy of Stephen Weiss, the former founder of the Non-Human Rights Project. He looked at chimps, he looked at elephants, he looked at honeybees, and compared them against his own child. And I think that we really need, that is what we need to sort of further fuel legal reforms, is solid research which shows how sentient and how not unlike the animal kingdom is from humanity. That would be the driving force of new laws.
Yeah. So are you seeing, there's obviously an awful lot of politics going on right now over your media and obviously over in your television, and there are over here as well. Are you seeing an increase in focus within party politics and manifestos coming out?
No, not like we've seen coming out of Europe and other countries. I think, we are at the very, very beginning of the animal rights movement in the United States. We have a humane party, but it does not get the attention that it gets in other countries, which is sad because, again, I think the public they're dying for this sort of information. In terms of presidential politics, I think a hard lesson has been learned by some candidates. Mitt Romney put his dog on the top of a car for a trip. And more recently, Kristi Noem talked about how she shot her puppy because it was disobedient. And there was massive backlash. And some speculate she was removed as a VP contender from Donald Trump because, dog owners and companion animal people were absolutely outraged that she had actually boasted about it. So I think that comment actually probably torpedoed her political career, as it should have, it absolutely should have. I did an op-ed to the Washington Post about how she had made that comment and how it's inconsistent with where we're going in terms of legal reforms. And I got a lot of feedback. People were like, yes, yes, yes. So that was encouraging to see.
And also, I suppose, public opinion. I mean, you would be hard pressed, I suppose, to ask any member of the public whether they thought she was right in doing that. We had a similar very old school conservative politician, Michael Heseltine, a few years ago. He was in the papers talking about how he shot his dog. Exactly the same thing. The dog was disobedient. He bit him, and he just decided to shoot him. I mean, his political career was well and truly over by then anyway. But people are rightly horrified. That's the thing which I think we are finding in common, that you talk to people, the ordinary person on the street, you talk to them about animal cruelty, and they totally get it. They might not be vegan, but they totally get the crux of it. And that's what we need to work on. And I suppose then we need to work on the legal side of it, the politicians, getting the lawmakers to sit up and listen and realise how many votes they can actually win by listening to people like us.
And we have a highly charged political environment now in the United States. I mean, you just saw we had an assassination attempt. But the reality is, the one thing that brings everyone together, and it doesn't matter if you're on the right side or the left side, is caring for animals. Time and time, we find that when that parties that are just as polarized as they can be come together and they agree when it comes to animals. Now, not as much as we would like to see, because we have it just takes a tiny minority to sort of kill any piece of legislation in Congress. So things like wildlife trafficking, but it is the one area that people can agree on and unite. So we want to see a lot more of that sort of bipartisan cooperation.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end of our time together. So we're ending on a positive note, which is really, really good. So could you just remind me, remind the viewers where we get hold of your book, and remind us of the title of it as well, so we can see. So show it up, show us.
Of course.
Brilliant.
It is called The Case for the Legal Protection of Animals. I'm not sure it's clear.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Humanity's Shared Destiny with the Animal Kingdom. This book is pretty much everywhere. It's even at Walmart. I saw the other day. It's on Amazon. This is going to be the first book of a series. So in the coming years, there's going to be a brand new book that's going to sort of pick off where this is left off, because animal is exploding. It's just exploding. So in another 3 to 5 years, there's going to be this much more information coming forth.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for sharing your journey with us and sharing your amazing book. It's been absolutely fascinating to talk to you. So I'm going to sign off now and say this is Anna Malia from Northeast Animal Rights, talking to animal rights author Kimberly Moore. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and goodbye for now.
Thank you so much.